Ja, ich denke mal, dann fange ich mal an und
I shall get going then. I would like to greet all participants, everybody who's here to get involved in the debate, everybody who is participating from home. We have interpretation available today, English and German, which makes things easier for me, but it's always good for somebody else too. If they're not great at a foreign language, they can get the nuances and the details. Me, as a politician and as a chef and a beekeeper, microbiomes is something that is very interesting to me. And I believe it's something that is very important, especially when we look at the aspects of nutrition, health, and if we look at microbiomes in Earth, or indeed in us or around us. I have learned there are many of us. We do not have a surroundings, but rather we participate and share our surroundings. I think this is a pretty way to look at things because it can give us a different way of looking at nature. We need to do that really. We need to have a different relationship with our environment. And we need to be able to do that, and we should do that really. Research on microbiomes and its meaning, and their meaning rather, is something quite new. Every year, there are new, interesting developments that show that microbiomes have a very important meaning in our bodies, and also for our health, as well as for our immune system. Bad nutrition is at play here too, as well as the weakening of immune systems. And that's also why I am so interested in microbiomes. This is a series of webinars on microbiomes, and this is the second conference that we are hosting. Today, we're going to have a very interesting topic, and that's overweightedness and obesity, and that's our topic today. We're going to look at different nutritional aspects today. You can ask us later during the Q&A session, and we can ask us questions, and we can try and answer them as much as we can. We're going to look at also what politicians can do in this regard, what indeed we should do, or proposals as to how this should really pan out. And that's why today we have two experts among us that I want to warmly thank. First of all, we have Eran Segal, who is from the Weizmann Institute in Israel, and is going to shed some light on how important personalized diets are for us, how individual diets are important in comparison to industrialized diets, perhaps. Then we have Ms. Cimmarusti, who is in Brussels working for Safe Food, who will also speak about nutrition and food policies. I would like to also greet Markus Peck, the chair of the Public Affairs Committee from UEG, who I'm going to give the floor to now. Markus, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yeah, for the nice introduction. My name is Markus Peck. I'm formerly working at the Medical University of Vienna, now in Klinikum Klagenfurt. I'm a gastroenterologist, hepatologist, and I'm the public affairs chairman of UEG. UEG is the United European Gastroenterology organization. You can see it here. Is a scientific umbrella organization aiming to improve digestive health, uniting around 30,000 specialists from every field of digestive health. And that includes, of course, gastroenterology, hepatology, but it also includes pancreatology, endoscopy, but also nutrition and pathology and many different areas. Now, the Public Affairs Committee should be a link initially between the medical specialists and the politicians. That was I think the original idea of creating this committee, to translate our needs or the needs of the community into the language of the politicians. But even more than that, the Public Affairs Committee also is committed to translating the scientific evidence and the health aspects for the general public. So we have this dual role here. The Public Affairs Committee consists of 15 or more people from the different areas of gastroenterology, and we have very good representatives also from the field of nutrition. Together with Sarah, we initiated this webinar series. This is the second webinar actually, and I'm very, very glad that here this time we have two excellent and very high level speakers to talk on the issue of digestive health and the microbiome. So it is really a great pleasure for me to introduce Eran Segal from the Weizmann Institution, who has been a pioneer now for several years in the area of microbiome research and digestive health. And you will see in his presentation that he has been running the Personalized Nutrition Project, which is a very, very interesting project that tries to translate some of the very difficult scientific findings into practical things that are relevant actually for our patients or for the general public. So with that, I'm happy to hand over to Eran, give him the floor, and I think it will be a great presentation. Thank you very much. Eran, please.
Thank you. Could you allow me to share?
Yes, I stop here, and I think you should be able to share now.
Okay. So yeah, I guess I think we have, just to keep on time, I think we have 10 minutes for the presentation, right?
Yeah. 10 or 15, as you need.
Oh. Okay, thank you. So yeah, we got into the area of personalized nutrition, I would say about 10 years ago. And some of the some of the questions that we asked are just very basic on trying to understand what healthy nutrition is. And for that, I'll describe first the very briefly work, because it was published 5 years ago, and then talk about some unpublished work. So we decided to, in terms of nutrition, to look at blood sugar levels in healthy people, and specifically in the postprandial glucose response, so what happens in the 2 hours after people eat a meal, because it's critical for weight gain. It's critical for multiple other diseases, for diabetes, of course, but also for other diseases. And so we initiated what we called the Personalized Nutrition Project. We connected participants to continuous glucose monitors, like the one that you're seeing here, which tracks glucose levels every 5 minutes for about a week. You can see also the periods of day and night here. And when we zoom in, you can see how glucose levels rise after participants eat either breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I'll just briefly summarize the results of this study, because again, it was published, but basically we showed, I think on an unprecedented scale of 1,000 people, that different people have very different blood glucose responses to food. You can see that here in the graphs of the same people, same person eating the same meal on different days, having very similar responses, but different people having widely different responses. And then when we took that and we asked, okay, can we explain, can we predict these personalized differences? We were able, and this is the second key result of this work, to build an algorithm that quite accurately predicted the personalized glucose response of a person given his clinical data, given his microbiome profile. And finally, in the study, we also were able to do a short-term dietary intervention of just 2 weeks and show that if you take the same person, this is shown here, on 2 different weeks, once you give him a diet that's supposed to balance his sugar levels, the other is supposed to disrupt his sugar levels. You can see that we achieved that quite nicely with the algorithm. And this participant who is pre-diabetic, you can see in red, has abnormally high glucose levels when we give him one diet, but when we give him the other diet that by the algorithm is supposed to balance blood sugar levels, we see that it does. So when we finished this study, one of the questions was, okay, but what is the long-term benefit of following such a diet? And so we took on ourselves this challenge, and we performed a randomized clinical trial, 200 people with prediabetes. We randomized them into either an algorithm diet arm, based on the algorithm I just described, and a standard of care Mediterranean type of diet. And because these are people with prediabetes, we mainly looked at outcomes in terms of changes in average glucose levels, measured either by hemoglobin A1C or by CGMs, and also by our ability to reduce the spikes, that reduce the time above 140. So the study design was as follows. After 1 month of profiling, we had 6 months of intervention, and then another 6 months of follow-up. Our primary outcome, again, were the ones at the bottom, the changes in average glucose levels, but then we had secondary endpoints related to different metabolic outcomes and lipids, and then some exploratory outcomes in terms of metabolites and microbiome. So by and large, we collected a lot of data here. Participants were adherent to the diet. You can see here they were equally adherent on both arms. They reported about 80% of their target caloric intake on a mobile app that we developed, and we collected a lot of data because we connected people continuously to CGMs. So we had on average per person about 20,000 blood glucose measurements, 350,000 calories from about 1,000 meals. In terms of results, this is anecdotally one patient that we connected initially to the profiling period before the intervention. And you can see a lot of spikes in glucose levels, indicating that this participant is indeed pre-diabetic. But then on the diet, we're able to virtually eliminate all these spikes in glucose levels. And when we look on the entire half a year of intervention, you can see here the different panels showing real success in eliminating these spikes in glucose levels. So this participant, if we look at the time above 140, went down from about two and a half hours above 140 on the diet before the intervention to about 5 or 10 minutes on our algorithm diet. Here's another participant where, again, you can see compared to the pre-intervention, the ability to reduce glucose levels significantly in the half year of intervention. And here's another participant, another one. And in contrast, this is a participant on the Mediterranean diet. So this is what happens to a typical person with prediabetes who has abnormally high glucose levels on a CGM. Typically, this is not measured, but in this study, we measured it. And then you give them a Mediterranean diet, and you can see that, at least by eye, it's hard to see that there's changes in glucose levels. I'll show you in a moment that there are, but at least by eye inspection, you can see that this diet worked not as nicely. And if we look, these are the participants on the algorithm diet, kind of their average response after meals in red, on the before the intervention, and in green after the intervention. You can see that it works very nicely for most participants. It really lowers the glucose spikes. much less so for the group on the Mediterranean diet. You can see that by eye. And if we put that all together into the primary endpoints of the study, we can see that first the Mediterranean diet in terms of the hemoglobin A1C, the standard for looking at glucose metabolism, we can see that there is a reduction after the 6 months of intervention. It's a significant reduction, but there's a reversal back to baseline in the 6 months of follow-up. By the CGM, which we had for 6 months, you can see also similar reduction, also about a 30% reduction in spikes in glucose levels by going on the Mediterranean diet. However, when we add to this the algorithm diet, we see much bigger improvements. So this is based on our algorithm, which again takes into account the clinical data of a person, his microbiome composition. You can see much more significant clinical improvements. And when we put these on scale with a big study done on at the NIH for tracking people with prediabetes, we see that we're doing even better than they had an arm of placebo, which got worse. They had an arm of metformin, which is a first-line medication drug for diabetes. And they had an arm of a lifestyle intervention, which is the Mediterranean diet, but also a caloric restriction and enhancement of physical activity, both of which we did not do in the study. We can see that with only a dietary change personalized to the person based on the algorithm, we can see much more significant improvements. And these improvements can have clinical benefit because the NIH on their lifestyle intervention showed a 60% reduction in conversion from prediabetes to diabetes. So because our effect was bigger, we believe that and hope that over years, we can obtain an even lower conversion from prediabetes to diabetes. Other measures that were more significantly improved on the algorithm diet compared to the Mediterranean diet were triglycerides, fructosamine, which is another similar measurement to hemoglobin A1C, but more short period, and also the ratio of total to HDL cholesterol. Some of the other measures were, and HDL also improved more on the algorithm diet. Some of the other measures improved in both groups, but were not significant between the groups. And that's shown here. You can see that in terms of metabolic benefits, essentially on all parameters that we measured, we got metabolic improvements for the group on the algorithm diet. I'll skip this. These are just different subsets of patients in our cohort. When we analyzed them, most of them also showed the same significant improvement. So I'll summarize the algorithm diet, which we developed on our original 1,000 healthy cohort, significantly improves upon changes in our primary endpoints, blood glucose metabolism, compared to the standard of care diet. Its superiority is independent of weight loss because weight loss was similar between the groups. The standard of care does not maintain the improvements after the 6 months of follow-up. The participants do maintain it on the algorithm diet. We outperform also the gold standard NIH diabetes prevention program that I showed you, and we improve on nearly all metabolic parameters, and we believe that it may reduce the conversion from prediabetes to diabetes. So with that, I'll end and put the acknowledgement slide of all the members of my group, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eran. Really, really impressive, but only a small part of your work. But it shows us very nicely, you know, in my diabetes outpatient clinic, we're facing exactly that problem, that people tell us that they're adhering and we don't see the results, and it would give us a very nice explanation, but not only an explanation, but also a possible solution to the problem. Yeah. So I don't think we're there yet. For the clinical practice, for the general population, right? For the algorithm, you need your very specialized field and your setup in order to do that. And I think I will not ask questions now, but we can discuss it a little bit later in the questions and answers. So with that, I think I'll hand over to you, Sarah, to introduce the next speaker.
Ja, ich fand das sehr spannend.
Yes, I found that very interesting. And I also have a number of questions on the algorithm diet. I think people want to know, what is it about? Or maybe Marcus, you are going to discuss this later with Eran. Our next speaker is Floriana Cimmarusti. Like I said previously, Floriana is going to give us an overview about the link between nutrition policies, and what we can improve upon, or what we should indeed demand. Floriana, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning to everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I was very impressed by the presentation we heard till now. It's an amazing work they've done on a scientific level, so it's very glad to hear the presentation before mine. Thank you so much for this. So first of all, I would like to ask to Viviane, maybe if you can show the second slide of my presentation. So next one, where there is a video who explain who is safe and what we do. If you go next slide and next again, and there is a video. Thank you.
Are you sure that all EU food is safe? Let's think about, for example, an apple.
Yeah, of course. It's safe and healthy.
What about pesticides?
I'm sure the EU is taking care of them.
How about these candies?
I think they're fine. My kids love them.
Do you know what they are made of?
A lot of sugar, I guess, but I'm sure that all the ingredients meet the EU regulations.
Can you read the label of those packaged foodstuffs?
Of course, I can.
Are they clear to you?
E171, E621? Oh, that's a lot of E numbers. I don't know what they mean, but for sure they follow EU regulations, so they must be safe.
But are you sure that EU food law gives enough consideration to our health? Safe Food Advocacy Europe. Safe. We strive for safer and healthier food for European consumers.
Yeah, thank you so much. Then we can go on next slide. So it was just to explain you who we are. I'm the director of the NGO SAFE. So SAFE is an independent non-profit organization. We try to protect European consumers during the EU food legislation process. And actually our main priority are strengthen the EU consumer voice in the food sector. We try to represent European consumers in the food sector, and public awareness and training citizens. SAFE was involved in training citizens, in children in school, explaining about nutrition, which kind of problem excess sugar can give to health. And we have training, and we've been financed by the Ministry of Education in Belgium to train more than 2,000 students on healthy food, how to read food labeling, and all these issues. So next slide. Today, yes, can you go on next one? Great. So today I'm trying to explain you very briefly what is happening at EU level in the sense of for obesity and obesity problems. So we know that obesity has become a major public health issue. It's a global crisis with serious social, economic, and health implications. For everybody actually, and the main priority at EU level are the farm to fork strategy. I'm sure all of you knows about it, and it's trying to establishing an harmonized FOP, is a nutritional labeling, and there is the EU cancer beating plan, which has been recently published by the European Commission, where there will be for school a revision of the EU school fruit, vegetable and milk scheme for 2023. Supporting member states on reformulation of policy to reduce marketing of unhealthy products. This is something very important, above all when we talk about reformulation. And then a guidance of codes of practice on reducing unhealthy food marketing to children. So this is what actually the EU is trying to implement. If we go on next slide. We see a bit the position safe on all these issues. So about the FOB labeling, the idea of having a FOB labeling is great. It should be mandatory, but it's super important is to take care of what is really important when we decide which kind of score giving to a certain food. And we believe that the presence of toxin and other substance on certain food should be considered, as it should be considered when food are ultra processed. So now if a food is ultra processed, or if there is a toxic presence of certain additives which are kind of hazard substances, you don't see it at all on the FOB labeling. But those issues, above all, if the food is ultra processed, should be considered in the decision of the score to give to the food. And the mission of the FOB should be the sole mission of improving European consumer health, and shouldn't be commercial interest of marketing interest to use a certain type of Nutri-Score better than another one for commercial interest. Should be really for the health of consumers. The second one is the nutrient profile. So the ban of nutritional claim on HFSS food and marketing on healthy products. It's a great thing that finally is going, I hope, to happen soon. But we should always consider action on food products reformulation. Nowadays, with salty and sugar food, where there is too much sugar and too much salt, is really not necessary. It's possible to reformulate and to reduce the amount of sugar and salt, and maybe the consumer wouldn't even notice it, that they will get easily used to that. If you see what's happening in UK when they put on sugary drinks, the levy tax on sugary drinks, a lot of consumers drink the same energy drinks which has much less sugar because of the taxation. The industry reduces sugar, and the consumer didn't even notice it. So can be very successful a reformulation. It's a lot of work for industry, but can be very successful for the health of people, and the consumer will continue to eat the same products, but with less sugar and less salt. And then there is the code of best practice, which is the guidance is currently developed by the Commission. And we believe it's very interesting to have it for the industry. However, it will be considered on a voluntary basis, while we believe that should be on a mandatory framework to prevent marketing tools that could negatively influence consumers. Maybe happen often when you go to the supermarket, even with your children, that there are very fat and sugar products with the hero of the children that adore of a cartoon, whatever. And these kind of products with this food packaging, they are in the supermarket really low. So what's happened that the child go and take it because what is on the packaging, and it's very difficult to convince you not to take it. And we believe that this kind of behavior, like to advertise certain products with a cartoon, etc., when the product are really salty, very fatty, very full of sugar, it should be forbidden at EU level. So next slide. Next slide. Again, another slide. Yeah, thank you. So
nearly 1 in 4 adolescents.
Sorry.
Are overweight.
Can you go back? Do you mind to go back? Yeah. So tackling adolescent obesity, SAFE is a coordinator of a big Erasmus Plus project. We believe that tackling adolescent obesity, it's an important issue. So we've been financed by Erasmus Plus by the European Commission. It's tackling adolescent obesity and promoting inclusion through nutrition training for disadvantaged youth. So what's the aim of this project? Is developing a transnational common strategy to tackle adolescent obesity. We have 10 partners from 5 different countries, and in certain countries we have national obesity organization, as for instance in Italy, and in Germany is the National Obesity Organization, which are our partner. It's a 3 years, almost 3 years, 3 years and a half project. So we create student training, teacher training, and e-learning platform. So I will show you this video will explain you very well the project. Thank you. Yeah, you can go ahead. Thank you. On the video.
Nearly 1 in 4 adolescents are overweight or obese in Europe. Overweight and obese adolescents experience much more bullying than their normal weight peers. Tackling obesity is not as simple as telling people to eat less or exercise more, because being overweight and obese is not just a personal fault. It's the problem with a society full of aggressive marketing of unhealthy food, body shaming and bullying towards overweight or obese people that isolates them in a circle of psychological pressure, eating disorders and weight gain. This is why TAL Project was created, to tackle adolescent obesity by promoting healthy eating, physical activities, good mental health, and a school environment that makes everyone feel safe regardless of their appearance. We will provide schools all over Europe with a student manual, a guide towards a healthier mind and body, an e-learning platform with useful tips and interactive content supporting the manual, and a teacher handbook, a guide to designing interesting nutrition classes. Thanks to the Erasmus Plus Fund, they are totally free to access.
Another boring nutrition class?
Not at all.
With us,
Tao,
and Laimi, we are the most awesome characters that you'll ever meet.
I know a lot about nutrition.
I don't know that much, but I'm learning and trying to be better every day.
We will give you super cool tips to eat healthily, be more active, and to love and accept yourself.
Recipes and quizzes and so much fun!
So if you want to bring us to your school, don't hesitate to visit our website and contact us at
meettao.eu.
Okay, thank you. So actually, I'll be very brief because I think I'm losing a lot of time. I'm Italian. We always talk too much, so I try to go to the point. So the project, we have created a nutrition handbook. Actually, a lot of schools in Europe are starting our project and it's going really well. On the 26th of February, we will have a conference on this project. Distribution and dissemination of the project in many schools, and we will identify students that will come to Brussels in theory, because with the COVID, all this has been unfortunately stopped. So let's go to next slide. So as was said in the video, there is a student training handbook, an e-platform, and a teacher training handbook nutrition. These are the main material we use for this training. I would like, as you have seen in the video, because this training is for teenagers, we try to talk in a language for teenagers. And it's not just to explain to them what to eat and not to eat, but on the material, we talk a lot about eating disorder, a lot about bullying, because obese teenagers, and not only teenagers, suffer a lot from bullying at school. So to help them to find a comfort zone with their teacher to talk about the issue and the problem and to be protected by all the bullying. So let's go on next slide. Yeah, the result is really economic in the sense that minimize the socioeconomic effect on the incidence of adolescent obesity. Educational results, educate better, prepare on the use of adolescent obesity, and more dialogue on issue of adolescent obesity. And what is very important, this project is the creation of a network to support adolescents from both medical and psychological perspective. Next slide, sorry, next slide. No, another one, sorry, again, another slide. Yes, so why is TAO important? It is important because we like to adequate social integration. I'm sure you're aware that if students come from a family who has economic problem, very often didn't teach in the right way the children what they have to eat, fruits, vegetables, and all these kind of things. Very often it's we don't have a lot of money, so we should buy food as cheap as possible to support our children. During the economic crisis in US, who earned more money at the time was McDonald's, because McDonald's actually give food very cheap. So what I want to say is that sometimes the economic problem goes with the bad eating habits and not the right information to your children. In fact, the schools have been choosing in more disadvantaged peripheral urban areas. We choose them on purpose. And the problem of bullying, the presence of training staff in school will help young people for their integration process. And there are within the project and on our platform telephone number of psychologists and staff specialized in improving psychological support to bullied individuals. So next slide. The project, as I said, is in different member states, Germany, Belgium, Italy, and Greece and Poland. And if there are any school or any organization who's interested to be part of this project, it's very open and it is completely for free. So I think next slide is the last. Thank you so much for your time and attention. If you have any question, very happy to answer. Thank you.
All right, Floriana, thank you very much for your presentation. I think we will dive straight into the questions. We got a few questions from the audience, and actually I'm not surprised because I think this is one of the key questions for you, Eran. People are very curious about the algorithm. Yeah, so from what I understood, you were looking at the glucose profiles and probably were looking at what people were eating to understand which foods in which person would create which elevation in blood glucose. And then you would also analyze the microbiota before the intervention. And then you would, based on your knowledge and your nutritionists and whoever is in your team, would devise a specific diet that maybe also included some personal preferences of the people. Could you and maybe ask the second question, because it goes with it, because the people are also curious. The prime target was not to change the microbiome, it was to change the diet. Even though you didn't present the data, obviously this would also lead to a change in the microbiome, but maybe you can detail a little bit on that.
Yeah, correct. So there wasn't obviously enough time to go into all the details, but yes, the initial training was, we had 50,000 meals from 1,000 people. We had the glucose response, and we had a lot of data per person, their microbiome profile and other clinical measurements, blood tests and age and BMI and so on. So by that, we could develop an algorithm that, given these inputs, can predict the response to the meal. And that's the algorithm that was published. And what we did now, yes, was exactly what you said. So to take this algorithm, run it on 2,000 or 3,000 meals that we constructed like popular meals, and score them for each person. And then if somebody didn't like some food, so we would eliminate them from the diet. But based on what was left, we could build a diet that was still good in terms of the glucose levels for that person. And then they followed it. And yes, that was the target, was to reduce glucose levels. We are now analyzing the changes in the microbiome. So no results yet, but yeah, we will see based on the analysis that we will have on that.
And as a follow-up question, do you think that at one point, maybe not now, but at one point in time, you will not only be able to modify the microbiota by diet, but you will also be able to modify the microbiota by any other drug intervention, and would be able to improve the glucose levels without people having to adhere to a diet, you know?
Yeah,
I was quite impressed.
So,
80% adherence is really great, you know? Yeah, I mean, I wish my patients would adhere.
Yeah, I would say the answer is probably yes and no. So yes, we would be able to, I think, as we understand more about the microbiome and its effects on glucose metabolism and other things, we would be able to change it either by targeted probiotics or prebiotics, or by medication, or and I think then it will improve. It can improve multiple aspects, including glucose metabolism. The part that I would hesitate and say no would be in the sense, I don't believe that we will ever be able to have drugs that would allow us to just eat whatever we want, and we will, take care of everything by drugs that target the microbiome. So I think it will always be a combination, but I think we would be able to do it by a combination of some dietary change and some change which could be directed specifically to the microbiome.
All right, Sarah, do you have any questions? You said you would.
Ja.
Yes.
I
have a few questions. First of all, do you think this is important that we carry out studies that just look at blood sugar levels because it plays such a key role in our system? Or do you have people who are saying that this is just one aspect, but there are many other aspects that we need to look at more specifically?
So Sarah wanted to know whether it was you were just
I interpreted that. Can you hear me? Are you listening to the interpretation?
Just looking at blood glucose levels, or you were also looking at other metabolites that would be important here.
So we did. So I showed some of the other changes, like in cholesterol and liver enzymes and so on. But we also performed deep metabolomic profiling of about 1,200 metabolites, and we are analyzing them now. There are multiple different changes, and yes, we will see what we find in them. Yeah.
Eine weitere Frage ist, es gibt ja sicher ein paar Laien, die jetzt zuhören und wir wollen wissen.
There are some people who are listening to us now, and people are learning. When it comes to nutrition, we need to be individual. There is no real nutrition recommendation that are pan recommendations that can be applied to everybody, but rather you need to look at the microbiome in each person's level, which is different to every person. And then based on that, you could have a personalized type of nutrition that can be suggested, types of recommendations that can be recommended. But I'm interested here, are there still some foods that you think, okay, it's not the case all the time, but can you say on the whole, these foods should be eaten so that you don't damage your health?
So Sarah tried to ask whether, besides this complex analysis, whether there would be a few more simpler advices that go beyond Mediterranean diet, which is actually already quite a good advice as far as we're concerned today, that you could give the general public that would fit to everyone. It's actually not your personalized approach, right?
Yeah. Well, so there, I would say yes, there are, but I think so. I will say this: for every food that we ever tested, there was always a big variation between people. So what that means is that if you recommend it, for some people, it's not going to be good. That's what the data shows, that you have spikes for almost every food. But having said that, of course, in general, if you want one rule of thumb, then at least in terms of glucose levels, reducing the amount of carbohydrates is going to give you a benefit. So I think in general, people who can adhere to a very low carbohydrate meal diet, on average, we would see improvements in them, but it's very hard to adhere to them. As soon as you start to introduce the carbohydrates, then I think the personalized approach allows you to specify better which ones are good for you and which ones are worse for you.
Und meine letzte Frage.
Good, and my last question then.
Haben Sie bei diesen Massen an Daten,
with this large amount of data that you have you looked at all different types of nutrition? Have you looked at heavily industrialized foods, or do you have a standard of rules, for example, that mean that foods must be freshly prepared? How can we understand this? Is there a complex situation here? Are you investigating every type of food, or are you looking, okay, goulash, sauerkraut, different types of foods? Do you approach it in that way? Do you have different types of investigations into fresh ingredients and different types of heavily industrialized produced foods, for example.
So Sarah would want to know whether when you tested this 50,000 different foods in your patients, whether you could see a systematic difference between naturally occurring stuff and ultra-processed foods, for example.
In general, probably yes, but not. I think it's a very broad question and would differ between the different foods. I would say maybe yes, but it's hard to associate that specifically with the ultra-processed foods because if they have more carbohydrates, then maybe it's because of the more carbohydrates and not necessarily the ultra processing of the processing of the food. So I think it's a little bit hard to give a precise answer to that, I think.
So just one more question, Eran, because I think we should also then switch to Floriana, is when do you think that some of your approaches will be ready for translation into the broader public? When are you planning to do that?
So actually, a few years ago, the institute, there's a spin-off company that took these algorithms, and they're providing this as a service now. Right now, it's in Israel and the US, and maybe expanded to Europe soon. But yeah, this approach has been used by over 60,000 people now, and it's also been adopted by the health organizations here in Israel and some in the US. So it's already undergoing translation. I think helping a lot of people, which, you know, for a scientist to go from an idea to a trial and then to something that goes to translation is for us, it feels very good.
And I understand you're having a strong program, a scientific program that's following even this translation into the general public.
Yes, so we are also studying this data that's coming out and the 60,000 genomes, metagenomes from the bacterial populations, and I think it's the largest microbiome data set, and yes, we are learning a lot of things from that, associations to diseases and medications and so on.
Great, thank you. Floriana, you wanted to mention something, or you had a question? Sorry, I think I cut you short.
No, I find the presentation of the work they did very interesting. I think it would be good to bring it to the broader public. So yes, I hope it's going really to happen soon, and we can get as much information as possible from Eran beside this slide. If we could retrieve something more, would be great.
All right. So Sarah, please go ahead.
Ja, jetzt wollte ich natürlich Floriana auch noch.
Now, Floriana, I also want to ask you a few questions. I myself, as an MEP in the European Parliament, naturally, I am interested in the political aspects here and what we can do in order to actually have knowledge properly known and we have properly labels at play. Research is new, and it's always the case that politics are a little bit behind any new developments. So my task is to ensure that microbiome is at the fore. What do you think? What's the biggest problem, in your opinion, when it comes to the EU in order to ensure that we can approach this from an EU institutional level? Do you have any suggestions in order to do that?
Yeah, can I have a translation? Because I cannot follow, to be honest. Could you please translate?
I am speaking, can you hear? I'm speaking in English.
What do you think is the most pressing issue that should be addressed amongst all these things that you showed us, or that should be addressed first? Because, you know, Sarah, as a politician, can press for one thing or the other. She probably cannot press for everything at once. So what would be your recommendation? What she should try to tackle first?
Well, there are many things. For sure, the Nutri-Score, trying to have a better Nutri-Score than the one they are proposing. I don't know if it happened to you in Belgium to go to the supermarket, but we can find ultra-processed chips, fried, frozen, with an A score, and then at the same time we find A score on an apple. So it's like if the Nutri-Score doesn't give enough consideration to the fact that a food is ultra-processed, a food is not fresh, and a food is for consumers who not every consumer has a lot of knowledge. This is, I believe, the way it is now can be very misleading. So Nutri-Score, excellent idea. So people know if there is too much sugar, too much salt, etc. But we should be careful with the type of Nutri-Score ABCD we're using on certain food, and to give enough consideration to ultra-processed and all hazard material ingredients, like could be several E numbers that are in certain food should be considered to have a good Nutri-Score. So now is the moment, I think, to find a way to have a better Nutri-Score than the one the Commission is starting to kind of propose. And I think the other issue is reformulation. Find a way to reduce sugar and salt in a lot of food. Consumers wouldn't even notice it, but will be much better for the health. I think reformulation Nutri-Score could be important on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Floriana.
Okay, thank you.
I try now to speak English because then it's maybe easier to close my translation, that I don't hear myself. Yes, I'm the Farm to Fork Shadow Rapporteur, and I fight also for labeling. Nutri-Score can just be yes, sorry, I hear myself. This is very annoying. This is but the same problem with what Eran has told us, that the healthiest thing is individual nutrition, and so we don't know really what we are eating now when you go into the supermarket. I'm complete on your side. We have to fight on this issue on the same side, because this is a nightmare, that there are a lot of additives you're not have even to labeling it to, so nobody knows what is into it and what does it to our microbiome, as we hear that is very important and had an impact of our bacteria family that we should love and embrace. And I have another question. When we are thinking about, so we have labeled the sugar, but what is with sugar additive? And also, is there a ranking that you would say this additive or this like sugar or alcohol is the worst and we have to tackle it first? Or is there nothing like a range in this nutrition nightmare?
Okay, about additive, there are certain additives that are approved by EFSA. I make an example, E171, which is a white additive, which is used on a lot of candy for children, on chewing gum for children, is to make the candy or the chewing gum white and beautiful, has been banned in France because it is considered dangerous for the nanoparticles that are inside. So the scientific opinion in France of their food authority said we ban it. So in France, you don't find E171, while in the rest of the EU is still there. So we should, and actually is the EU who wants to go against France because they ban it. But I think France did the right thing because they used the precautionary principle that the EU institution should use too. So this is an example, a fight that SAFE is doing. We did a petition, we had a lot of signatures on our petition, And actually, if you have the occasion, because there's this beautiful documentary exists in German, in France, it's done by Arte. It's called La Malbouffe, and it went out just 2-3 weeks.
Ja, da kann ich gleich aushelfen. Auf Arte, der heißt...
I can step in. On Arte, yes, it's called witch cooking. If you've seen this, if you haven't seen it, rather, I very much recommend it. It really shows how the industry looks at food and how it works with it. I found that documentary.
I posted it on Facebook, this documentary from Arte, so you can find the link very easily. I have another question. What would be your recommendation for the nutrition industry to to stay or to become healthier? Are there recommendation, or is the recommendation don't buy anything you can't cook at home yourself when you look at the labeling? This would be my recommendation as a chef.
Yeah, yeah. We shouldn't, I mean, of course, we'll be better not eating ultra-processed food, but we know with the family, work, etc., sometimes you don't have a choice and you do it. It's okay, but what I will propose to the industry, and what is really happening with a lot of industry, by the way, is all those additives and all those that there is so much research who said that could be very dangerous for consumers, just eliminate it. Because some of them doesn't change a lot. So if your food is not that white and then brilliant, you don't have E171, or your food, there are other additives which just make your food more beautiful, or there are colorants which they don't give any taste, they just color the food to make it nicer, and some of them are carcinogenic. Just to try to use less additives and try to do the food as natural as possible and to reduce sugar and salt. I think would be already a different industry if this would happen. It was the industry of some years ago, my grandparents, something like that. And I think there are additives that are completely useless and they can be really dangerous for people. So it would be very simple to do that.
Thank you, Floriana. I have to commit. Now we are coming to the end. There are so many open questions and so many interesting issues that I can promise you we will do in the next few weeks, the next webinar. And then we will talk about artificial or high processed food, artificial additions. So it could be very interesting, and we will have the following discussion. I wanted to thank you first, of course, our two experts. Eran, this was really amazing to hear what you have done, and it could be really a complete new thing to look different to our food system and to our health and immune system. So I'm looking forward, and I want immediately to fly to you and looking at my own microbiome. So maybe I will have the chance once time. Floriana, I say thank you to Brussels because it's really important your work. I appreciate a lot that you're fighting for a better food system and the political ideas we have to stay in contact, of course, and to fight for the right to say. And at least I wanted to thank you, of course, you, Markus, and the UEG. Without them, we couldn't do this webinar series, what is so important and so close to my heart. So I'm looking forward to have another webinar, not just one, but few, to really tackle the theme, the microbiome from all the sides, and also maybe to understand people how important this matter is, and that it could really influence our future and our nutrition. And I give you the last word, dear Markus.
Sarah, thank you very much. I'd like to thank you really for all of us, because maybe people don't know, but it's impossible to have such an event in the parliament without an MEP hosting it. So you are actually the most important person here in the room. At the same time, I would also like to thank not only the speakers. I was absolutely thrilled, and Shira Selbasagi, who recommended you, Eran, and I'm very grateful for her input throughout all the time with regards to nutrition. She's really great. We couldn't touch really liver disease too much. There was one question why we were not talking about liver disease. Well, we were not talking about liver disease because we already were talking so much. But I would also like to thank the participants. There were over 70 people online, and while you were talking, I was answering the questions in the chat. I hope to the satisfaction of the people. I think it was a really great webinar, and I'm looking forward to the next one that we will have in the not so distant future this year. Thank you very much to all of you.
Yes, maybe we can have another webinar just for liver diseases, what is also close to my heart, because I think it's very important and that's a great impact, and also because of personal reasons why, because I lost a few people about liver diseases. So maybe we could do that, Eran, and you would be so kind to join us in the next months again for 1 hour.
All right. Guys, thank you very much. Sarah, all the best.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
I want to say thank you that you have listening us, and we stay hopefully in contact, and it was very interesting for everybody, and I wish you a nice day and a nice work, and be careful what you are eating, not just today.